Imagine it's 90 degrees out and you cannot hide. There is no air conditioning. There is no cool place to be. How are you going to cool off? That is the world of 250 years ago. How did the average, especially outdoor worker, how did they stay cool in this time period? That's a really good question, and it's one that's not necessarily easy to draw out from our primary sources. People don't necessarily talk about, hey, today I was really hot, so I cooled off by doing something, right? 18th century field workers were used to working out in the heat, and they would just deal with it by, well, drinking cool drinks. It can be hard for us in this modern day to click on to the idea of what it would be like to not have any kind of cold drink at all. Nothing like that available. And a few years ago, I was on a long-term trip to Africa, and I spent a couple of weeks out where there was no air conditioning, there was no refrigerator, there was no cool anything. And then we took a trip into town, and I had my first ice cold Coca-Cola in like 10 days, and it was amazing. Just one cool drink can change your entire worldview. And so imagine those hot weather workers in the 18th century, and they want that midday drink that resets the world and lets them work for the rest of the day. In the late 18th century, in the 1790s, a little piece showed up in the newspapers. It was called Advice to Haymakers. And it gives us a glimpse into what the haymakers, these field workers, were doing for a cooling drink and what the author's idea of what they should be doing for a cooling drink. He talks about the idea that when we're working in the hot weather, we drink a lot and we sweat a lot, and we need to drink the proper kinds of things. He starts off with what not to drink. And he says, then do not drink flip. The body in this sultry season being extremely heated, it's like a still, and the rum immediately flies off. And the heavy, clammy dregs of the beer and sugar remain to clog the stomach and render the laborer dull and weak. He moves on to what to drink, and his first suggestion is to drink switchel. Now, we have done an episode on switchel where we spent a good deal of time making switchel, and we'll make some for this episode. But switchel is a trickier drink to kind of pin down. It turns out to be apparently really a North American kind of drink. I think there are relatives of switchel that go back hundreds of years, but this name and this particular kind of mix is harder to come up with. It kind of pops up here in the late 18th century and in North America. He says, drink switchel. That is molasses or maple sugar mixed with water. Now, switchel generally in directions is a little more complicated than that, but then he moves right on to some other ideas here. We could drink whey or milk and water, so mixing it. He says here 2/3 to 1/3, so or a watered down milk. I'm not sure if that would sounds too great in the hot weather. He says to drink cider, which sounds pretty good, but he says mix it with water, not to have hot cider. Now this one's related to switchel. He says drink vinegar and water. So what we think of switchel is usually something like a combination of both the molasses and the vinegar and water and maybe some other ingredients, we'll find out.
The first drink that we're gonna do for our summertime cold drinks is switchel. This is probably the most basic, and this is something that anybody could make. It's a nice thirst quencher, but it also has a little bit of sugar. It can keep you going, and sometimes they would even add vinegar to give you a little bit more of a punch. Now, some people even call this the Gatorade of the 18th century. It's really simple, and it's very much a make it to taste kind of recipe. We're gonna do a spoonful of maple syrup in this cup of water, and we're gonna do a spoonful of molasses in this cup of water, and then to the molasses one I'm gonna add vinegar, so we can try what it tastes like with that vinegar and without, and see what we like best, but also understand maybe why would they be adding vinegar to this other than the benefits of vinegar. Does it really throw that taste off too much? I've known people that have done things similar to this. I knew an old timer that when he worked, he would put a little bit of honey in a jug of water and he would shake that up and drink it all day. So this isn't uncommon for now, and people still take a spoonful or however much vinegar every day because of what it does to their digestive system and what it does to their body. So these are still components that we use. I don't know if we see them quite packaged like this. So let's taste and see which one we like better. It's interesting because the molasses is going to have a lot stronger of a flavor, but I did cut that one with the vinegar, so I have no idea what that's going to taste like. This, I can pretty much anticipate what maple syrup and water is going to be like. It's nice because the water is the temperature that it is here in the German kitchen. It's not a very cool building, but it is a little cooler than outside. But something about having a little bit of sugar in there makes it just refreshing. And so I can definitely see how this would be good for a laborer. And I wouldn't go too heavy on that syrup either. I would just do a little bit. This one's got the molasses and the vinegar. That's really good. Either one of these is refreshing. And I think that what you need is every once in a while, especially if you've been drinking a lot of water, you need something that's not water. And this is just enough of a tweak that it is just kind of entirely a different drink and very refreshing. You cannot talk about cold drinks for hot weather without talking about fortified wines, punches, different alcoholic drinks, because they're such a staple in that time period. And if you're going to entertain, or if you're going to have an evening drink, now we're not talking about in a work capacity, but in a relaxation capacity, this is what you're going to go to. A drink that has some fruits, some juices from those, maybe some sugar, and then sometimes up to 7 or 8 different kinds of alcohols, and sometimes just one. This one in particular is for raspberry brandy, and so we're going to just take one single fruit and we're going to fortify that with some brandy and just flavor it up with a little bit of sugar. All of these have a number of different ways that you can make them. So you could take your raspberries, put your sugar on them, cook them, and make them into like a raspberry syrup, and then discard the rest of the fruit. Other times what you would do is take your fruit, cast sugar over it, and let it sit for maybe even up to a week, and that's going to start to draw some of those juices out of it. Today we're going to do the quick version, but keep in mind that anytime you make something like this, the longer it sits, the better and stronger it's going to be. Look at that. What a color. It looks really wonderful. You can't really quite see through it. It's kind of opaque. It smells like a party. Let's give it a shot. Okay. It's boozy, but it's delicious. It's really, really good. Think about raspberry syrup and throwing in some brandy. That's what we got here. Now, the longer this ages, the better it will taste. And the more you drink it, the more you will tingle, because this is turned up to 11.
We also have his directions to drink pure water. To us, it seems obvious. Drinking cool, clear water in the hot weather, that's what to do. But it's hard to come up with number one, cool and definitely pure and clean water in the 18th century. There is a very, very interesting book from the middle of the 18th century written by a French author, and he spends the entire book talking about water filtration. It was very surprising to me. Usually I think about that as a much later idea here. And in that Frenchman's book, he has 3 or 4 ways that they typically filtered water in the 18th century. They would make compressed sand filters. There were also ways of doing it with porous stones. They had certain kinds of volcanic stones in the time period. They would make them with a dish in the top. They would pour water, and the water would filter through the stone and become clearer in the bottom. And then the method that he said was the best, probably because it was the easiest to use and you didn't have to have a 300-pound stone to filter your water, and that was to filter your water through sea sponges. And he had various different apparatuses that he would have in his book, little diagrams of ways that you could build a sort of a water cistern that water would have to flow through this sponge, and then you would have pure water out the other side. Although he mentioned the idea that his pure water would taste like a swamp. Doesn't sound so good to me. It might be hard to bring a cool drink out to the field, but people in houses had the ability to have cooler beverages. You could have a spring house, and this was fairly common. Spring comes out of the hill, and you would build a little house around it. The water would flow through that, and you would put jugs of milk or whatever you wanted to cool off. You would use it as a kind of a refrigerator. And water that comes straight out of the ground, at least around here, varies to about 55 degrees or so. So you could have it fairly cool. Not as cold as a refrigerator, but you would many times use that to store milk and other products to keep them from going bad rapidly. There are also people in the 18th century and certainly in the 19th century that are using ice houses. It is probably a little more common than I would think. If you dig in the newspaper references of the time period, you'll find basically real estate ads, and you will find references to ice houses in the 18th century in just kind of standard houses. Many houses had cellars, possibly outside type root cellars or cellars in the house themselves, someplace that they could keep something at least relatively cool. Probably not as cool as a spring house, certainly not as cold as your ice house. And we have archaeological evidence of people putting bottles down into a well to cool off. So these were made specifically so that you could tie a little rope or cord around the top of the bottle here. It would stop at the neck, and then you could lower that down into your well water, again, probably in that lower 50-degree kind of temperature, and bring that up and maybe serve it to guests. We have other great choices that we have had on the channel before. So we spent some time talking about lemonade, and lemonade has a great and wonderful history in the 17th and 18th century. It's an item that was sold in the streets. It was a classic summertime drink to cool off with. We also have drinks that were a little bit more medicinal in their aspect. Barley water is another one of these great drinks. A summertime drink, you heated it up to make it, but you could certainly drink it cool, and it had a refreshing aspect to it as well as some sort of electrolytes in it. So it would help you restore after sweating a lot. Another interesting drink that shows up, and it's much more medicinal, at least early on it was, and that was the julep. A julep is a drink, at least in our time period, that had to do with either hiding a medicine inside it or something that you used to chase a medicine. So you had some icky tasting medicine, you wanted to be able to drink it down, and you had a julep. And if you look in the medicine books of the time period, many of them are still working on the four humors, the cold and the hot, the damp and the dry. And you will find many references to a cooling medicine, something that you would, when you were very, very hot, you would use that to counteract the heat in your body. And so you will find references to a cooling julep.
Right here is a cooling julep. Now this is different, and it's kind of interesting because when we think about a julep now, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is a mint julep. Maybe that's just me because I grew up in Kentucky, and that is like, might as well be the state's drink, but this was a medicinal drink in our time period. And so even though there's not any actual medicine in this, it was a cooling julep meant to cool you down on a hot day. And it does have some violet syrup, and it has some rose water with medicinal qualities. And you know, it's got vitamin C, so we're getting to medicine. Sometimes it was a way to hide medicine. Sometimes it was a way to chase medicine. This right here, this is the medicine. It's really simple. We're gonna take a Rhenish wine, take a white wine, and we're going to add 2 ounces of rose water, and then we're going to add just a little bit of the violet syrup and a squeeze of orange. And so we don't have to go with particular measurements here because you're gonna do it to taste, although we wanna get plenty of rose water in there. And I think everybody on the channel probably knows I do not like it, so I'm doing this just for you. So imagine somebody had a touch of heat stroke or somebody had too much sun. This is your go-to beverage to get them to cool down and feel better. You have to think about this like medicine, not just an enjoyment drink that you drink in the hot, hot sun. This is a medicine. And it smells like potpourri. I hate rose water, but I'm trying to look past it. Let me get one more sip. That's good. That's really good. You'll enjoy it. Shrub, for the time period as far as cold, fortified alcoholic drinks, is the king. We know that presidents and forefathers were drinking this. They're mentioned by name: Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and many more. This is the drink. If you're having your friends over, if you want to relax in the evening, this is it. So what we're gonna do is, instead of taking a full-on recipe, because you can, but they're made for these huge amounts, we're gonna make a small shrub, and we're gonna use a pint of our rum. We're gonna use about a 1/4 pound of sugar, and we're gonna use some citrus. We're gonna flavor this to taste. Now, they do call for Seville oranges, and those are not something that we can get our hands on anymore. So I'm going to use some grapefruits, because Seville oranges are a bitter orange, and that's gonna be about as close as we can get. We're gonna mix it up. So in the time period, what they would do is they would make a big barrel of this, and they would leave some of the rinds on, because they would age it for a long time. We're doing the quick version, but you can do that at home. You can leave the rinds on, you can age it for a time period, and then take them out. That's completely up to you. This shrub is the one that I was most excited about of all of these drinks, so I wanted to bring John in to check this out with us and give it a taste. This one has rum, a bunch of citrus, and sugar.
Well, it smells like a summertime drink, but
yeah.
I'm not so sure. Let's find out. Okay, that's kind of strong, but very flavorful, and I'm sure it would be very refreshing in the 18th century summers.
Yeah, I think there's something about the citrus that it is refreshing, right?
Yeah.
Just like lemonade. But this one's got some rum in it, and I don't know, for kicking back on the porch or just like entertaining people, I think it's the ticket.
It's been great to dig into these summertime drinks, see some of them as simply pure water, and other ones complex drinks that you would use for entertaining in the summertime. It's been great to dig into these and to try them out.